So, good morning. Continuing the tshuva here from Rav Avers. Yesterday we got sidetracked. In fact, on YouTube, if you look, I see I decided to call the video of yesterday something else because we effectively just discussed what I think are best practice in terms of rabbinics, approaches to public policy, etc. So we didn't really do very much of this. I don't apologize for it because I think it's actually incredibly important. But let's get back to our topic. And today we will, in Yetz Hashem, we will go through this tshuva, we'll finish this tshuva, and then we will start with this, the purposes of the video, which is a pack I've prepared with some of the, you'll see. Okay, let's go. So where we were up to is as follows. The question that was posed was, should Rav Avers and the Kehillah of Amsterdam accept this person as a Kehillah member? And the way he frames the question is it mutter to accept him as a member of the Kehillah? Bororli. Go to we'll start from where it says bororli. Yeah? Bororli. One thing is for sure. From a halachic perspective, it is utterly forbidden for this person. Halachically, this person is still a male and therefore cannot marry or be sexually intimate with a male. That would be mishkav zocha. Despite all of these manipulations, hormone therapy, whatever it is, any sort of reassignment surgery, makes no difference. So if the person is indeed halachically a man, we now need to know how best to advise him insofar as the following 8 points, and they are: does he now have a halachic imperative to restore his genitalia to their original state? Sorry? The question is it a halachic requirement? Is it desirable? That's the question. Is there an obligation to do so? He writes in brackets, he says that in Holland it is possible to perform such surgery. It remains mechanical, because I think it's mashma from the tshuva beforehand that they actually did what's called, if I'm not mistaken, a penectomy, which means the removal of the penis, I think. So once that's gone, once it's gone, it's gone. So they could then they could then possibly fashion some sort of artificial, but whatever. Interesting. Number 2, his obligation to put on tefillin. But clearly he doesn't get a period. So I'm not even sure why what's the shaila to put on tefillin? Of course he has to put on tefillin. Why should he not be able to put on tefillin?
Because for the outside, maybe it will. So maybe he has to do it privately and not in the shul.
That could be. He doesn't say that. His question is well, maybe that is what he means. Let's give him some rope. Let's see. Gimel. Brackets. He wants to be behind the mechitza. That is his desire. That is what he wants. He wants to be in Dalad Levushay. There's halachas, as we know. Dress. Hey, yichud. I know you guys are learning hilchas yichud. Vav birchas hashachar. Does he say shaloi asani isha? Zayin la'achameh ve'esrim. Who does the tahara? Chevra Kadisha, male or female? We male members of Chevra Kadisha see to the males and females to the females. And finally, ches chiyuv legabe mitzvos aseh shetluas bizman v'talmud Torah. Time-related mitzvahs. I don't remember whether I've mentioned this to you before, but it's useful to know, especially whenever maybe we should do feminism at some point. That would be interesting. Do it as a topic, because it's kind of related a little bit. But here's a question for you. Women are potter from time-bound mitzvahs, as you know. It's such as man groma. Any idea of the number?
Number of mitzvot?
Yeah. 300, okay? Do I have any advance on 300? I have 300 in the left corner. Do I have any further bits? Do I have any advance on 300? No advance. I'm afraid it's not sold to you. The correct answer is 14. There are, out of the 613 mitzvahs, well, the 365 loisa say, of course she's obligated, right? You don't get a free pass just because you're a woman to do any Aveira. Sorry. Okay? So that's 365 before we start that are relevant.
But equally to...
Yeah, of course. Of the 613, only 14. That means, my maths is right, 599. What's that in percentage terms? 1.5%, 2%? I haven't done the maths.
But it's such
do
a
it very
big
quickly.
argument.
Well, this is what I'm telling you. And of those 14, the vast majority of them, they can perform if they want. And according to Ashkenazim, they can even make a bracha.
Right.
You want to sit in a sukkah and make a bracha? Be my guest, quite literally. You want to shake a lulav? You want to shake a lulav? You want to do what you want. Shofar. You want to hear shofar? Hear shofar. Etc. You with me? Mm-hmm. It's really, and I think you very nicely, thank you. I'm sorry that I didn't mean to be deceptive. That was quite a high number. But, but I've made my point. And that is the point. In the popular perception, especially I suppose when you're talking to feminists, it'll be like, we're second-class citizens. Okay, I have another whole way to frame it. I will refrain from going further. Maybe we'll do a session or two on it, because it's actually, this actually is something that is pretty important. And there are some, okay, I've had an idea. That might be our next thing.
We will collide with that.
Oh, no, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah. And
there are some important things that you need to know, and hopefully we'll deal with that. Okay, so this is Teshuvah. Let's see what he says. Ein b'steichem in Mareches, Halam and Klal Kufta. Zayin shehevi b'shem Rav Yofa Alev, b'shem Sefer Shemer Emunim, Kli Geva b'chilov Eishes Ish Kli Geva b'chilov Atbash Zu Tfilin, Shein Soid Alma de Dechura, Vein Raya Mi Michal, Kabbalah, very nice. So Pirusha B'Kabbalah, Michal was an Isha Chachoma, and she put on tefillin. She had a Neshama de Alma de Dechura. Now, this is a Kabbalistic idea. I'll quickly mention it because we certainly don't base halacha on it. That's for sure. But there is such a concept as having a male or female neshama or parts thereof. And he's bringing here, the Kabbalah Sfarim say that Michal had a neshama from the world of a Zachar, and that's why she didn't have children. It's very, they feel naturally that there is a disconnect, or they're trapped in the wrong body is the language that's often used. Even were this to be true, even were we to say that a person has this sensitivity to somehow detect that their neshama is misaligned with their body, blah, 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 even if that was the case, but we still are subservient to halacha. Halacha still reigns supreme, and halacha is very, very clear on the subject. It does not allow us to change one's gender. It is absolutely also, for example, to castrate somebody. This is a doiraisa, with the male certainly. This is, it's an absolute doiraisa. We saw this already. Even if you do it after somebody's already done it, there's Malchus. Kate said, Kulam laikim. And even though it is an issa whether it's Terais or Rabbanon, there's certainly no Malchus for it, but it's still forbidden. So therefore, point number one, what the fellow did was wrong. Now, im shinoi ben gufa yikava shini bezahusav yichuda ish kazeh ula gufa shel dava. Now, he'll quickly summarize that which we spent quite some time learning already, so I'm going to rush through it, which is, does science have even the capacity? We know that it's forbidden, but let's say it's done. Does it actually alter your status as in terms of your gender? Does halacha recognize that? That's this paragraph. Im shinoi kanal be'ivarav mahava shinoi bedinav halachas v'shal hay gavra. Does it work? So he brings the Tzitz Eliezer mechka gadol yesh umnam lachker behechesh mischayil shinoi mahuti organi beguf shel adam. And this is we've done this already, right? So he goes to the. Let me just bring this one out. Let's go to the. I've lost my place here. Kain Ra. He brings the sefer from Palaji. Maudin. Idilma. Veheshev. Just go to the end of. That's what I was looking for. Go to the end of the second paragraph on the next page. Veheshev shenir deloit tzarich get de zochar hu ato veloy isha. Vehevi al zeh beis tamim. The nusach haget and the kavachim from Eilanis. And go all the way down to the end.
That's based on Falaji.
Yeah, it's based on Falaji. Correct. Which we've done. So I'm gonna skip ahead. Trumas Hadeshen, Eishes Elio. We've done that. Go to the next column. Yotzei mehanal. Next column. Yotzei mehanal achura bashkofa rishona sheshinoi. So therefore, this is this one controversial or interesting tshuva of the Tzitz Eliezer that perhaps would appear to indicate bashkofa rishona with a first superficial glance. Sheshinoi beivarav mishana zahusa v'chudoi ho'ishi. Maybe it is indeed possible. Ulam. Next paragraph. Lefein is daiti ania kotan ena dava kein lamaisa benidin didon. But he says that's not going to be applicable in our case. As we've seen already, some poskim commenting on the Tzitz Eliezer. That's when we're not clear what the reality is, but somehow it happened. A nes, shin in the teva, whatever, some bizarre anomaly. And then we're talking about an androgynous, then could be that according to most poskim, there's a suffix zocha, suffix nekeva, tesus yivamas, we did this already, That could be. However, next paragraph, Omnam einav avakein benidin didon. But in our case, this is artificial. It is externally manipulated, and therefore there is no reason to suggest that such a person changes. They remain. You were a male. Once a male, always a male. There is nothing you can do hormonally, medically, chemically, surgically to change that status. The bottom of the page, that he says that it does not make any difference. Over to the next page. He brings the Shelas Yaiverts. We've done this already. That's why I'm skipping through it. So I want to get to the end here. Avol kan hazachrus. Let's go from there to the end. Avol kan hazachrus. But here, his male genitalia. Shon misapkim by ein lochus shenishapech. Ki bossa ba'almahu. It's just bossa. Ubavada lenichbel gid has chorus lefonim elo lehepach. Hu efshe shenisha she'ever an kevis yotz lachut alvich nidbelei v'azocha. Blah blah blah. Sorry, I thought it was here. Whichever way you look at it, he remains male. Oid hechachto shenituach shalivare hamin ena mashana ma'amodai. That brings the Ibn Ezra again. We've done that. The Kibalti. So this is Rav Evers then actually sent this shaila. This is what you do. It's called we say she'elas chocham chatzi tshuva. When a chocham asks a question, you provide. It's called she'elat chacham chatzi tshuva. He sent this. All of this we've read or not read until now, which is the Maramakemis that we learned. He sent this to various gedolim in Eretz Yisrael to ask them for advice. Again, he's the Rav in Amsterdam. He is a serious Talmud Chacham, But again, what are you seeing here? You're seeing a humility. You're seeing, like we discussed yesterday, you're seeing a recognition that this is a weighty matter, and he wants to do it, or doesn't go it alone. That's the way we do things, especially when it comes to these serious issues. So, final column. V'kibalti tshuvas mikama gedoyle hera b'inyan anal v'chulam pe'echad anu v'omru. He said he wrote to numerous poskim, and they all said, Aleph, shani tuach l'shinem ha'modei v'zahusai, he remains male. Base, of course, also l'ischatein im ish, he cannot marry a man. It would be mishkav zocha. Gimel, ein laharshis lo likonis bebeis hakneses im hu melubash ke'isha.
Wow.
You need to actually, and here we really get into the nitty gritty.
Wow.
And you have to, again, remember context. You're dealing with somebody who, on the one hand, has this whole identity thing going on. On the other hand, wants to be chayzer b'tshuva. So, the honest and correct thing, you have to tell them what is in their best interest.
For tshuva.
This is, in other words, you want to go to a mosque, you take your shoes off. Those are the rules of a mosque. You don't like them, so don't go to a mosque. In an Orthodox synagogue, men and women sit separately. This is what we do. This is what we've always done, and this is what we will continue to do. In Jewish law, a man may not dress as a woman. What you then do in the street or in your private home, it's not in line with halacha, but I'm not going to... that is not my responsibility as a rabbi to police that. But it is my responsibility, not my right. It is my duty and responsibility to preserve and maintain the sanctity and the values and the halachic values which are embodied in being in a house of tefillah, an Orthodox shul. Even if it's uncomfortable. Davka when it's uncomfortable.
Right, that makes it the obligation.
Davka when it's uncomfortable. So, and the way to look at it, if I may add just a nakuda here, which is really, really important. Heinrich Heine, I think have I quoted him to you before? No? Yeah, he says that there is nothing as illiberal as a liberal who you don't agree with. Liberalism, as in this, and we're seeing this today very much. We'll talk a little bit more about this. Liberalism often appears to be a one-way street. As long as you are tolerant of any concept or you have to be, the imperative of liberalism is a one-way street. Mm-hmm. So, for example, and we'll talk about this a bit more when we talk about pronouns and stuff like that. When it comes to, often when it's a double standard. It is absolutely a double standard. There's no question about it. And this is really what's bothering many thoughtful and sensitive conservatives. And this is this is not even halacha. This is, yeah. Mm-hmm. You would never go into a vegetarian restaurant and demand to be served meat. That would be impolite. There is also and I've encountered this so many times, and it's very hard to try and disentangle it, because very often liberals have this idea, and at its root, it's a noble idea that we should just be nice and kind to everybody. You want to be called a woman, so why not call that person a woman? What do you care? They want to be called he, she, it, they. So when it's looked at, and this is the key argument, when it's looked at from that perspective, then that makes a lot of sense, and it does appeal. Somebody wishes to be, what do you care? What do you care? They want to be called a woman, call a woman. Why does that? And the response has to be, and this is really, really important, the response is not, I don't care. And that's why Ben Shapira's, his oft-quoted aphorism, facts don't care about your feelings, whilst it might be correct, I actually don't like it at all. Because, and again, he's operating in a different space, but I don't like it. Why don't I like it? Because he's correct. But that doesn't mean that is the right way to approach it. Whether objectively or not you are a man or a woman, and we're going to discuss that hopefully still today, we're going to get started. That is not the point here. The point is, why not go along with that person's, even if you want to call it, he calls it a delusion. And let's say it is, but what do you care? I'm a helicopter. Respect my pronouns. Fine, be a helicopter. I find it offensive if you're going to call me he when I think I'm my self-identity is that I'm a she. Why not go along with it? The only answer is not because I don't care about you, or because the answer is because that has a lot of consequences which impinges on the sensitivities of others. Serious consequences, potentially very serious ones which could involve other people getting really seriously hurt physically, not just this violent words, safe space, microaggression, trigger warning type thing. And we're talking about real violence. And that, again, that is not to delegitimize that if somebody, through no fault of their own, really, really, really feels, and they feel offended and hurt and genuinely and deeply hurt, if that was the only issue, fine, call you whatever you want, what do I care? My grandmother used to have a Scottish grandmother. She was actually from Odessa, but from Odessa, but via way of Glasgow. And she would say in her dour Scottish accent, I can't even try and do it, she would say, call me anything you like, don't call me early in the morning. That was kind of, so, yeah, whatever. The point is, so for example, in women's sport, one of the arguments is, it very, very seriously disadvantages and undermines the very real hard work of female athletes, women athletes, if all of a sudden a trans woman comes in and knocks the spots off them because they're physically stronger. That's a reality. That's only in the field of sport. But then when you've got people coming into mixed lockers and the quite well-documented sexual assaults that take place. So what happened to the rights of women? What about the sensitivity to them, that women have their safe space where they can change and shower and whatever it is, or without, and it does happen, and it happens more than once and more than twice. So everybody's all for sensitivity, but there are consequences, and the big picture needs to be it needs to be taken into account. It's when one person or one subgroup's sensitivities and feelings trump everybody else's. That doesn't add up. That just doesn't make sense. So it's not about being horrible to other people. Of course not. That is kind of, I've summarized it in the very, very, very short, and there's a lot of facts and stuff that goes with it. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay?
Isn't it also the case here that for example, a Jew has the obligation to not agree with their rights in this case, because your obligation is, so to speak, not to do it.
My obligation, as let's say, as a Rav or as a is to preserve and support and uphold the halachic principles which govern a Beis HaKnesset.
Right. So it's like against your obligation.
Correct.
So
it's not even me. It's not even me choosing to. That's your point.
Exactly.
Well done. Well put. I got there. I got it. You're right. Very well put. It's not me electing or choosing to deny you access to this. I can't. I'm not allowed to. Exactly. It is forbidden. Right. That's very well put. That's really well put. I have a chiyuv. So, let's just take another example. People speaking in davening. So, one isn't allowed to speak in davening. I have a job to maintain decorum in the shul. Now, obviously, I do it carefully and sensitively, and I have to decide when to shush somebody, when not, etc. Because there is a balance. You need to win people over. But on the other hand, the tzibur have a right to come to a place which is and where the davening is as befits this kehillah, and I have to preserve that. Does it make me unpopular with people? Yes, there is one member of this kehillah who refuses to talk to me or look at me, and I paid that price. I don't regret it. I did it
Because you shushed.
because yes, and one person got very, very, and I tried making peace. He's not interested, and that I've paid a price. Yes, there's one member of the kehillah that doesn't look at me, doesn't never mind, doesn't speak to me, and I'm not happy about it, but I don't regret doing what I did because it was the right thing to do. Leadership is often not a popularity contest.
Right.
It's a lonely road where you have to balance. Of course, one has to do it sensitively and think. You cry wolf every day. You just stand from the thing and shush everybody the whole time. It doesn't work, and B, it's the wrong. It's about, and every kehillah is different, and you'll find that balance. But you do have to have a spine. You have to have a spine. People don't respect you if you are all things to all people, and that is your job. And occasionally it will bring you into, and I personally am very uncomfortable with conflict. I'm a people pleaser naturally. I need to work against that to do that, but that's the job. What's the old saying? A Rav that nobody likes is nicht kein Mensch. A Rav that everybody likes is nicht kein Rav. You have to find that somehow, that balance.
My Rav said the Rav that people talk about you,
Yeah.
and if they don't, you're not worthy.
yeah, nice. Yeah, that's another way of putting it. Okay, so you're not allowed to let him enter the. You have to obviously you do it nicely, and you say, look, you are a male. I cannot for the same, and it would be exactly the same if somebody insisted on using their mobile phone during davening, insisted on making calls or coming in on Shabbos and it would be the same thing. And this is or insisted on bringing tray for food, I don't know, in or whatever. Or if a woman decided that she wanted to come downstairs and daven in the men's thing, well, which is effectively what we're saying, but kind of the other way around. And we'd have to say, this is Orthodox practice. If this doesn't work for you, I'm really, really sorry. You'll have to go elsewhere. That's the bottom line. And therefore, and the hard thing, may I say something? I actually have one or two, few people that I'm supporting, in touch with, otherwise from homosexuals, and who struggle with their, It's all about, what it boils down to at the end of the day is the personal approach. Now, if somebody just walks in off the street, you haven't had time to form a relationship with them. Relationships think of it as a bank account. If you don't deposit, you can't make a withdrawal. Mm-hmm. If you deposit and you encounter somebody on a daily, a weekly basis, and you build up a certain credit of trust, of respect, maybe even of love, and they trust and respect you, which is what they need to do, whilst being warm and friendly to them, then when it comes the equivalent of what we call in English a rainy day, and you need to make a withdrawal, they'll accept it. That's fine, because you have credit there. That's the thing. I had a very interesting conversation yesterday. I know we're being recorded, so I'll use my words carefully. A prospective Gayrus candidate called me up, interesting conversation, and told me that they had been approached by somebody else and who had offered to do Gayrus for them. I'm being deliberately vague. And I said, so right, thank you for what. So they said, well, I'm calling you because I consider you as my Rav, and I want your advice. And I said, okay, if that's the case. Once I understood what, so I said, don't do it. Go with the ORD, whatever. I said, because this may be quicker and it may be easier, but it won't be recognized in England, France, Eretz Yisrael, Germany. It won't be recognized. And they were really, really grateful, because even though the other person, based in is somebody they already have a relationship with, and I don't know that they're putting pressure on them, but has said, just come and do it with us, and it's a based in, and it is orthodox. I had to say, actually, it won't be in your best interest because, and they said, oh, thank you. That's exactly what I want. I said, don't sugarcoat it. This is why I called you, because with that person I had built up a certain, obviously some sort of currency of trust. Therefore, they felt able to call up and ask for advice on something which is sensitive, personal, and difficult, and will involve much more. It'll be much harder for them. But ultimately, it's trust. That person, remember, if you're not Jewish, and you're coming, a guy with a beard, a based in, and like, whatever. How are they? So they're navigating a foreign, alien world. You need a guide. You need something that you can, and this person said to me on the phone, I trust you. And I said, I appreciate that trust. Thank you. I don't take it lightly. And you have to, you share that, and you say, because then you're sharing an emotional space, but that's really, really important, because at the end of the day, it boils down to relationships. So if this guy's just walked in off the street, it's going to be hard for Avivas to, but if it's somebody, and that's why really one of the reasons a Kehillah needs a Rav, and more than that, and that is why it also takes a little bit of time, but till you get to the point where you've nurtured, hopefully, for those that are open, cultivated that, and then you can get stuff done. And it's the same thing in a marriage, in a friendship. You've deposited. There's emotional capital, I call it. Emotional capital. Then you can make a withdrawal when necessary. But if you haven't invested, you haven't made deposit, you can't make a withdrawal. We found that out to our cost in 2008 in the financial crisis. That's what happened. You can't take something out if there's nothing there. So alcohol upon him. That was, by the way, but important. So he says you don't let him into the. You have to explain.
You can't.
You can't. He can't. You can't. I'm not allowed. I wish I could. Yeah. You can totally empathize, and you should totally empathize with that person. They're going through very real psychological pain. It's not going to be easy for them. There's a vort on this week's parasha. I'll quickly share it with you because it's relevant, and it's actually a really good point. It's a Hasidic vort. Moshe Rabbeinu comes and sees this the one Dosan hitting Aviram, etc. Ishmael, and Vayifen koi v'choy vayarki ein ish, and he looked here and there, and he saw that there was nobody ein ish, and therefore he hit the Mitzri and buried him, killed and buried him in the sand. So allegorically, metaphorically, Moshe Rabbeinu was brought up his whole childhood in the house of Paroi, right? And that was necessary for various reasons. So he was brought up totally in a totally Egyptian culture. He becomes great. Vayigdal Moshe, he becomes a gadol. And Rashi says there, Nosan Einov v'liboy liyos meitzar aleim. That's what it means to be a gadol, by the way, is to be able to have Einov v'liboy, intellect and emotion, to connect, to understand and to connect, and in that order, and then to connect emotionally with his brothers. He goes out, Vayifen koi v'choy, and he looked into himself, and he saw these two competing identities within him. I'm a Mitzri, that's good, and I'm Vayarki ein ish, and he saw I'm not an integrated whole. Well, you have to make a decision. Who are you? He took the Egyptian within him and he killed him. Vayitmanehu b'chol. That's it. I'm throwing my lot in with my brothers. It's a beautiful idea. It's drush, but it's a really lovely idea. I think it's not pshat. Of course, it's not pshat. But it's a wonderful springboard for understanding. So, I don't even remember how I got to that. So there was a way. So you can't let you can identify with this person, but you can't let him do that. Fine. And he needs to. There's another point, of course, and that is this person will need to dress as a male in order to be allowed into the male section. You can't let him into the female section. But then there's another thing. You can't come into the male section and sit down if you look and you're dressed as a woman. That's also, so again, that's not going to be easy for this guy, but this is fundamentally the choice he's going to have to make. This is what it means to be Orthodox. Okay, And then he says, he asked Rav Waldenberg. He asked, and this is really interesting, and he asked Rav Waldenberg, and he said to me, Mikol Mokoim, Tzrichin lekarvoi leyahadus b'chol mada efsha. Of course, you should endeavor to bring the person close, embrace them, as to make them as close as possible to Yahadus. Try and do tshuva, even though it's going to be really, really hard. It's not. I wonder. In fact, I need to ask Rav Evers, and I'm actually going to call him up. I'm going to WhatsApp him and ask him what happened with this person, and I'll give you a postscript. Kitzur, here's the summary. Once a man, always a man. From a halachic perspective, once a woman, always a woman. It would be also, of course, for him to change, to undergo a procedure. It'd be forbidden for a person to marry, to be intimate with somebody of the opposite gender, once we've decided what it is, and and we've discussed how to allow them into the shul. And with that, I think we basically finish With that, we finished. We're not going to spend any more time on I've taken you at length, I think, through all the various halachic opinions. I don't think it's worthwhile starting now for 5 minutes. I don't think it's worth starting. What we are going to do tomorrow is, I prepared a bundle for you here. I might actually put it nice into give you just a teaser. We are going to look at the medical diagnostic landscape, the World Health Organization, what's known as DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual number 5, which came out, I think, in 2015, which removed gender dysphoria, removed gender identity as a mental illness and replaced it with gender dysphoria. We will look at the dictionaries with an update as of literally a few weeks ago, and this is going to be our key topic. They've changed the definitions of woman. And the key question we have to ask ourselves is, and it is a deadly serious question. Matt Walsh, that's it.
Right.
Have you seen the documentary?
No, I just know his question is always...
So look on YouTube. I will actually put on the group, I have not had time to watch the whole thing. It's 1.5 hours. You can always do it on fast forward. I'm not guaranteeing that it's all kosher. I haven't looked at it, but you're hopefully old enough to know when to fast forward, and I don't think there's anything that's seriously not. But he has recently done a documentary, really not that long ago at all, called "Who is a Woman?" It's 1 hour 25 minutes.
What is
Sorry, or what is a woman? I'll send you the link on YouTube, because if you go to the Daily Wire website, they charge you for it. I found it finally on YouTube, the full version for free. So, and that is the key question. And this is what we'll start defining. And this is something which for millennia was taken for granted. Today, it's more than, it's a political hot potato, such that earlier last year, we're now in 2023, but about 6 months ago, when there was public judicial committee hearings for Supreme Court of the United States of America justice, and a woman was asked, could you please define a woman? And I have the transcripts, and we'll go through those as well. And they felt themselves unable to answer that question. And this is where we're at. And there's a sting in the tail. There's a sting in the tail. I want you to think logically about a problem of defining a woman. Why is it now difficult? And what is the problem? And how is it actually now unanswerable? It is actually unanswerable. And we're going to make an argument to say that actually today there is no such thing as a woman. Logically, we're going to make an argument tomorrow, when you think about that post this revolution and the definition, the Oxford, the Cambridge, and the Merriam-Webster dictionaries having changed their definitions, and we'll provide you with the evidence. We now actually potentially, this is what we need to grapple with, is there could be that there is no such thing as a woman. Sounds crazy, it isn't, as we will discover tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Okay.